Hello, my name is John Glamouris, and I am an independent contractor. And I'm here on behalf of the Solutions Lab, which is a group of 11 citizens who came together last fall to come up with some ideas to improve the residential landlord and tenant situation, specifically to provide recommendations to government as they improve the legislation. We are feeding into the public engagement process, which is now started, and the problem solvers want your help to improve these ideas. The task of the problem solvers through the Solutions Lab was to provide solutions to inform the development of best in class legislation to create the framework for healthier tenancies in the Yukon. Today, I'm going to go over three buckets. The first is, what exactly is a solutions lab? Who is involved and why did we pick that approach? Secondly, we're going to talk about the results. What were some of the ideas that came out of the solutions lab, which are now being handed off to you, the general public, to improve even further? And lastly, what is our call to action to you? So first, let's talk about what is a solutions lab. This is a tool that is used in a bunch of jurisdictions around the world for a bunch of topics. There isn't exactly a right or wrong way to do it, but in a nutshell, it's a focused structure where a group of people come together to ideate some solutions, not just about problems, but about coming up actual solutions. We decided to use this technique because this is a very polarized and complex conversation. So we thought we'd try something different to bring together a committed group of citizens who bring a variety of backgrounds, perspectives, opinions to help shape the very dimensions of this topic. We had 11 citizens, and as you can see, they come from a variety of backgrounds, from a whole bunch of spaces and sectors that really have some unique perspectives on the residential tenancy conversation in the Yukon. Now, it's important to note that while these individuals do bring a variety of backgrounds based on the organizations they are involved with, they were here as citizens first. This is not to suggest that these organizations have in any way endorsed these ideas, but we think it's important to show you, the public, the diversity of perspectives that came together in the Solutions Lab. We did a whole bunch of things, and it really was about coming together and trying to unpack what it is that is holding us back and to imagine alternatives that some would say, not your way, not what my way, but what's a third way? In a nutshell, we went through this journey together. The first was to connect as citizens and to really understand where people were coming from, to set the relationship and build trust, which is crucial in any journey of problem solving. We then went to a space of, what are some of the problems that are out there? Let's understand them deeply and then prioritize them by urgency and perceived ease of resolution. Through this phase, we also had an opportunity to bring in outside experts to help us understand a variety of things that we might not understand within the group. It was also a chance for participants to go a deep dive in something that they were passionate about. From that, we moved on to a phase where we really spent time understanding the root cause of a variety of problems. This is important. A lot of public policy conversations fall short because they jump to solutions without really understanding the root cause of a problem. So we invested a lot of time in this space, and then we came up with a bunch of solutions and tested them almost like a hypothesis. And wherever we could find vulnerabilities, we came back to improve it further. It's important to note that in this part of the journey, a lot of concessions were made, realizing that given the polarity of this conversation, we needed to find that third way. And that was an impressive part of the process. From there, we ended up with a series of problem statements and associated solutions. The Solutions Lab is done. It finished last fall. Now we are starting the broader public engagement process. And this is where I'm here as one of the facilitators to share on behalf of the Solutions Lab participants the ideas they've come up. And they need your help. They're not perfect. We believe there's wisdom in the crowd. So let's see what's possible. It was intense, not going to lie. In 26 days, we had 16 evening sessions. They're volunteers. They were very committed to citizens. We had 7 live documents, and the whole thing was fueled by 31 pizzas. I'm joking, sort of. It actually was fueled by goodwill and trust and believing that we actually have the solutions within us. The whole process, in a nutshell, was a balancing act. And so this is an important starting point for you, the public. The problem solvers are in agreement that the following solutions are lab generated and are offered as a foundation to you, the broader public engagement process for further exploration. Important to note that support for an idea to move to public engagement does not imply necessarily absolute support for the idea. The agreement was, this is worthy. Let's put it to the public and see if they can improve it. It's also important to note that a couple of these ideas are put forward as a joint series of solutions. Some of them are coupled and can't be decoupled. And this represents where there was concessions made. In a nutshell, I'm going to move into what were some of the problems we identified and the associated solutions, and we're handing them to you to help us improve them further. So here are the ideas. As noted, we came up with 7 problems with 7 associated solutions. And you can see the first 2 are coupled. That means they go together. That means from the Solutions Lab perspective, they cannot be decoupled. I'm going to go through them one by one. So the first solution is around flexible rent increases. And as you can see by the graphic, this is coupled with tenant support, which I'll speak to after. But let's start with the first one, flexible rent increases. So what's the problem statement? In the Yukon, tenants face a shortage of residential rental units and increasing rent prices. For landlords, rising expenses and reduced control over rent to cover their costs are causing many to leave the market, which further reduces the availability of rentals. So with this problem in mind, here is the proposed idea. Develop an index and stabilize rent increases while allowing for adjustments to market conditions. Under this include to create an industry index and enable rent increases up to it. Secondly, currently the financial terms and occupancy terms of a tenancy agreement are connected. The Solutions Lab participants propose separating those 2 ideas to increase the flexibility of landlords and tenants to find arrangements that work for them. Lastly, to enable rent increases to exceed the industry index if and only if both the landlord and tenant agree and understand the terms. This is the first idea. Now, as mentioned, the idea of flexible rent increases, 1A, must be coupled with 1B. This is a package deal. This is part of the concession. So 1B is around tenant support. And the problem is this. In the Yukon, tenants face a shortage of residential rental units and increasing rent prices. Rising rents can outpace wage growth and spike, quickly compelling tenants to leave good rental situations. So with this problem in mind, here is what the Solutions Lab proposed. Coupled with flexible rent increases are tenant supports, specifically increased support for tenants in need to afford rent at the market rate. This means to create a new rental assistance program that subsidizes tenants in need to meet their monthly income payments at the market rate. Conditions may apply. For example, tenants must be residents of the Yukon for at least 1 year. This part wasn't fully fleshed out, the point being there may be conditions. So this is the first packet. Flexible rent increases coupled with tenant support. Moving to 2A and 2B. Ending tenancies coupled with collecting data and understanding the tenancy market. So the first problem statement, 2A, is landlords and tenants have limited flexibility in ending tenancies, leading to tension and conflict. In particular, the inability for landlords to manage risk and costs causes some to leave the rental market, which in turn reduces the supply of housing, or resort to unlawful termination of tenancies. With this problem in mind, the Solutions Lab is proposing to simplify tenancy arrangements and promote long-term planning and communication. How? Enable landlords to end tenancies with appropriate notice, subject to the act or changes to it, including giving notice to sell. There may need to be consideration of exceptions when ending a tenancy without cause should be restricted, for example, a major life event. Secondly, to enable landlords and tenants to renew tenancy terms with appropriate notice, again, subject to the act or changes to it. Third, to enable flexible notice periods to end tenancies that are market-based. And lastly, to allow for additional deposits, including those for pets, fuel, and furniture damage. So this idea around ending tenancies 2A is coupled with and must be coupled with 2B. And the problem statement for that is there are gaps in our understanding about the residential tenancy market in the Yukon, including the current number of tenancies, the parties to them, and how they terminate, hampering the ability of landlords, tenants, and policymakers to make informed decisions. So the solution to this problem, coupled with ending tenancies, is collecting data and understanding the tenancy market. What is meant by this idea, again, to understand the residential rental market comprehensively through data collection as one example, is to create a simple registry of tenancy agreements where landlords and tenants file their agreement with a neutral third body that is empowered to track and report on market data. There should be exemptions for businesses providing housing for employees and for organizations providing housing for clients. Those would be exceptions. The registry can be used to establish market rate, but has other benefits, including resolution of disputes, market insights, public health benefits, improved housing quality, transparency and accountability, correct the narrative about landlords and tenants, etc. The key is with this new body is it wouldn't replace the residential tenancy office as a tribunal, but will be there as a support. So again, the ideas around ending tenancy 2A must be coupled with collecting data and understanding the tenancy market 2B, at least as proposed by the Solutions Lab. Moving on. Number 3, this is a standalone, education and support. So the problem here identified by the Solutions Lab was when issues are brought to the RTO, the Residential Tenancy Office, where disputes are solved, it is predominantly due to a breakdown in relationship between landlord and tenant. A high proportion of conflicts between landlords and tenants could be resolved before they get to the RTO. So the solution is to increase education and support for landlords and tenants to resolve issues. How? By creating a landlord and tenant support office, which we sort of spoke to in the other idea. This would provide the following supports to landlords and tenants. For example, help educate landlords to improve their units for health and safety and on where to access funding for improvements. Secondly, to advise tenants and landlords on the rights, responsibilities, and process orientation for the RTO. Third, to mediate conflict before it even gets to the RTO or when a case cannot go to the RTO. General education outreach, and last, where there are viable but not code-conforming units to work with the landlords and tenants directly to identify health concerns. This is the third idea. The fourth idea is about the residential tenancies office efficiency. So the problem statement here is there is frustration and confusion about the perceived lack of transparency, capacity, lengthy adjudications, and process clarity at the RTO. With this problem in mind, the solution lab, came up with the following. To support the RTO in its work to be more accountable, transparent, and efficient. How? By streamlining application processes and create transparency through a user dashboard that identifies progress, next steps, and so on and so forth. In a system. And third, once a decision is collected, there needs to be support for the landlord and or the tenant to help them navigate the next phase and necessary processes should parties resist taking responsibility. This could be the newly proposed landlord and tenancy support. Last but not least, the fifth problem statement is around the notion of the Act and regulations clarity. The problem here identified by the Solutions Lab was landlords, tenants, and housing policymakers require more clarity about definitions and intentions in the Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, which is the framework for all of this. So the idea is in the RLTA, the Act, or through policy, increase interpretation for landlords, tenants, and decision makers. Specifically, separate and clarify damage deposits from security deposits. The primary purpose of a security deposit is to secure the unit for the tenant until occupancy, whereas a damage deposit is specifically intended to cover any damage to the rental property during the lease term. So the recommendation or the idea is to separate and clarify these. The second is to clarify who can apply to the RTO. For example, specifically for groups and individuals that have their own policies, such as social housing and First Nation citizens through their governments, and some dwellings and rental types, for example, shared accommodations, hotels, etc., that are not covered under the RLTA. So there you have it, 7 problems identified by the citizens in the Solution Lab, along with 7 ideas. Again, flexible rent increases and tenant support are coupled. They are seen as a package deal based on the concessions that came through dialogue. Similarly, ending tenancies and collecting data and understanding the tenancy market are a coupled package. You cannot split 2A and 2B. Education and support is a standalone. Residential tenancy office efficiency is a standalone. And finally, Act and regulation clarity is a standalone. This, in a nutshell, is the ideas generated by the Solutions Lab, which we offer to you, the broader public, to help unpack and improve, because our goal is to create some best-in-class legislation in the Yukon, and we believe it is possible. So this is where we will end. We need your help. Help us build and improve on these ideas. What do you think of the Solution Lab idea? In the spirit of solutions, what would you suggest to improve these ideas? Are we missing anything? And in a nutshell, what is your best advice to YG in its desire to create best-in-class legislation for healthy tenancies today and tomorrow? So with that, we invite you to participate in the variety of ways to share your thoughts. Could be an online survey. Come check out one of our public events. There's a variety, and we think they will be constructive and worthwhile. Thank you very much.